then we can assume isostrain, because if the loading was like this, then both my layers have the same strain. If both of them have the same strain, then I can go from isostrain assumption, and then it is basically a thickness weighted average. Okay, this way you can calculate the in plane, and be careful when if I say in plane properties, in plane modulus. Okay, so in plane modulus, how will you calculate out of plane modulus? In plane is you calculate it one by one for the different layers, and you have volume weighted average. If the loading is like this, then what assumption can I make?
So we can use 3 layers under isostress condition.
We'll then use isostress assumption. We don't need 3 layers for isostress. Even if it is 2 layers, we can still go for isostress assumption. Okay, so the reason for discussing this question is that the isostrain and isostress assumptions are actually very powerful. It is not only for unidirectional composite, you can calculate it for cross plies or some type of textile composites also. Okay. And I'm seeing that some of you have posted your answer. Let us see your answer. So in this, what we have done, isostrain, isostress, and together it is isostrain is 116, it is 5, 116 plus 5 is 121. Yes, this is right. If you're only small points you have to keep in mind. Is the picture visible? Is the image shared by Jayanti
Yes,
Bhai?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So in these few points I have to make, whenever you, so this is, you have to write clearly what it is it E2, E3, E1? So this is E1 is equal to E2 is equal to this. You also have to write your unit 60.75 watt, but in principle it is right. Okay, and if it is E1 is equal to E2, should come out to be this value. E3 will be inverse rule of mixtures of what? What will be the value of E3? What is the E3 of A? Like there has, each layer is named as layer A, layer B. What is the E3 of A? E2 is equal to E3. Yes, for composite materials, unidirectional continuous fiber materials, one being my fiber direction, E2 is equal to E3. Correct or not correct?
Correct, sir.
So E3 for A is 5 megapascal, 5 gigapascal. E3 for B is also 5 gigapascal. So what is E3 of your entire composite material? It is 5 gigapascal. It doesn't matter whether it is longitudinal or transverse. The value of E3 is the same. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So, and also in this problem, sometimes it might be needed that you have to calculate the Poisson's ratio or the shear modulus. Accordingly, you have to take care of isostrain or isostress assumption. So keep that in mind. But I think this is a good example to prove that this isostrain isostress principle is actually quite powerful. You can calculate the properties of large number of different type of composite materials. Okay, so now let us go to our next topic. We want to calculate now, the next topic is micromechanics of short fiber composite materials. When we say micromechanics of short fiber composite materials, we want to do the same thing. We want to find out what is the average property of the composite material and what is the strength of the composite material. For that, we will first discuss what is known as the Cox model, and then we go to the Kelly model. From that, we will have the concept of critical aspect ratio and how properties can be calculated. So what is our problem statement? We have a composite material which has fibers which have a certain length. Maybe it has some length distribution also. And we have a certain fiber orientation or fiber orientation distribution. We want to calculate the effective properties given that the properties of the fiber is known, properties of the matrix is known, and the length and the orientation distribution, if any, is known. What is our approach? Our approach is first we will try to understand the mechanics of stress transfer between one fiber and the matrix. Once we know what is the stress transfer mechanism between one fiber and the matrix, then we can go to if all the fibers are parallel or if some fibers are randomly oriented, and then we can calculate the effective properties. Okay. So in a graphical manner, this is our problem statement. If you have continuous fiber composites and if you are loading in the one direction, EC is equal to EF. Strain in the composite is equal to strain in the fiber and the matrix. This is not a function of length x. As I go in different points, the strain is not varying. Okay. Also, stress, I can say directly stress is equal to Young's modulus into strain. And Young's modulus of fiber much more than the Young's modulus of the matrix. This is what we have done in the last week. So this is an easy problem statement. For now, our problem is slightly more complicated because we can no longer say that the strain in the composite is the strain in the fiber in the matrix and it is a function of x. So these three quantities are not equal and it will vary from point to point. It will be a function of x. The strain at the tip of the fiber will be different. Yes. Yes, anybody has a question? Okay, so basically we are looking at a composite system like the fibers that are like the one shown in the red box. Fibers are discontinuous, and because the fibers are discontinuous, the strain at every point is not same. It is a function of x, where x is the length. Okay, stress in the fiber is also not constant. At point by point, stress might vary. Because of these two reasons, modulus of a short fiber composite is different than the modulus of the continuous fiber composite. And the modulus is a function of the fiber length, many other things. We want to, so first of all, we are going to find out how this sigma f is varying as a function of x. Once we know the stress in the fiber, then we'll calculate the stress in the matrix, integrate, and then try to calculate our modulus based on that. Okay, is the problem statement clear that how our problem is different from the problem that we had in our first week?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so basically, since stress is a function of fiber and it varies from x to point, we can expect a stress to have some sort of profile like this for the fiber and shear stress. Unlike if it was a continuous fiber, this would be a straight line and shear would be 0. Okay, so first of all, we are going to study the stress transfer principle. Stress transfer principle means you apply the load to the matrix. From the matrix, the stress is transferred to the fiber. How is this stress transferred? That is known as stress transfer principle. Okay, this will be based on simple force equilibrium between the tensile force in the fiber and shear force in the matrix. I will discuss in more detail these points in the next few slides. And then one by one, we will have two models. The first one is Cox. The first one is by Cox and the second one is by Kelly. And the Cox model assumes that there is traction continuity between the fiber and the matrix. If you remember last time we had discussed, remember we had said that at the end of the fiber, there is a high stress and at the matrix, there is traction continuity. So where fiber ends and the matrix starts, the stress is high. So that is the starting point also for the Cox model. Okay. Now, sometimes these models are also known as shear lag models. Why they are known as shear lag models? This is because these models are based on the assumption of shear transfer due to stress transfer due to shear. Imagine that you have a composite material, which is one fiber here. This is my fiber. So I have one fiber and the rest is surrounded by matrix. Okay. Now in the matrix and fiber, I am drawing straight lines like this. Okay. So these are straight lines just drawn for visual. And if you pull it, like this, how are the straight lines expected to deform? The straight lines are expected to deform as shown below. The fibers have high stiffness, so the straight lines inside the fibers will remain same. The matrix has stiffness which is lower than the fiber, so there the straight lines are going to become curly or little bit wavy. Okay. Now because of the fact that the straight lines in the fiber are remaining straight and the matrix is getting deformed, can you hold on for 1 minute, please? Sorry. So where were we? So we were saying that I have a fiber and it is surrounded by matrix, and in the fiber and the matrix I am drawing straight lines. I am drawing straight lines. Okay. Now, and then I try to pull it. I want to visualize how the straight lines look like. Okay. So due to the fact that the stiffness of the matrix is lower than the stiffness of the fiber, the matrix is going to deform more than the fiber. However, at the point where fiber ends and matrix starts, there is perfect addition. So at that point, the fibers and the matrix are going to have, if the matrix has no deformation, the fiber also has no deformation, and vice versa. And as I go away from the fiber, the deformation is going to be more and more. Okay. When I have a situation like this, what is the state of stress in the matrix? Anybody can tell me? Or in other words, if a certain strip was shaped like a rectangle, after deformation, it has taken this shape. When this happens, what is the state of stress in the matrix?
Shear force.
Shear stress, that is right. Yes. So this theory is saying that when you pull a matrix which has one fiber inside it, due to the presence of the fiber, there are additional shear stresses. And this transfer of shear stress from the matrix to the fiber is causing my stress in the fiber. Therefore, these principles are also known as shear lag principle. If I look at this exaggerated view, so we have taken one strip, okay? The fiber was a rectangle, remains a rectangle, but the matrix from a rectangle has taken this shape. So there is shear at the interface, at the place where the fiber is ending and the matrix is starting, there is shear. And due to equilibrium, that shear is causing some normal stress in the fiber. So the medium of transfer from the matrix to the fiber is through shear. Therefore, these principles are also known as shear lag models. Okay, is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Now let us look and let us try to derive how the stress is going to vary at a point to point in the different points in the fiber. Okay. So for that, let us take one fiber and let us make a small segment of it. So it comes out to be like this. Let us try to write the force equilibrium in this small region. In this small region, we will write down the force equilibrium. So the net traction on the cross section is the same as the shear force on the cylindrical surface. So if I cut this small segment, I am going to get a coin-like surface. And for equilibrium, the net force on the two faces of the coin should be equal to the net shear force on the curved surface area. So we can write pi r square into d sigma f, because on one side of the face I have sigma f, on the other side I have sigma f plus d sigma f. If I minus, it is pi r square d sigma f is equal to minus 2 pi r tau I dx. So tau I is the shear stress. We are saying that it is at some point, it is tau I. 2 pi r is the curved surface area, tau I into dx. 2 pi r dx is the curved surface area into tau I. So they have to be equal for equilibrium. From that, I can get d sigma f by dx is equal to minus 2 tau I by r. It means that tensile stress will vary proportionally as the interface stress. So there is more the value of tau I, higher is the variation in the normal stress. Okay? Is this clear? Is this step clear?
Sir, why have we assumed net traction to be just longitudinal stress?
Why have net traction to be longitudinal? So we have assumed that basically we have assumed that we have a strip like this. Okay, and we have assumed that there is traction in this face, shear in this face. Okay, so there is no possibility of having shear on the circular face. What will be the source of that shear? No, actually, wait. I have made a small mistake. 1 minute. Pointer. So basically, we have shear is like this. This is due to the deformation of the matrix. This is balanced by the normal force across the two faces. You are saying that why not we have? You are saying why don't we have shear like this? Yes, is that your question?
Yes, sir.
We are, first of all, that shear would not come in our traction balance, because basically we are doing summation fx is 0. This shear would be in the y direction. Number one. Number two, what is the source of this shear? Why would this shear be there? And if this shear is there, why is it in this direction? Why not in this direction? Because your shape is symmetric. If you're, so it could be in any direction, yes?
Yes, sir.
Ultimately, the net sum will come out to be 0. And we will not bother ourselves with that, because we are interested in the traction in the x direction. X is this direction.
Understood, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So this
Sir,
is
how
our,
did you get the negative sign there, sir?
just by
Like both are
convention.
in opposite directions, no, sir. So it should be like the force due to d sigma and tau are in opposite directions.
Sigma plus d sigma. So this plus this is equal to 0. So this is equal to minus of this, based on the figure that I have drawn.
Okay.
sigma plus d sigma f and tau I are in the same direction. So this plus this was equal to 0. I am writing this is equal to this. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Good. Okay, so let us now keep this important result in mind. Let us take our derivation further. Now, this black one is my fiber and it is surrounded in matrix. Next, we or Cox in this case made an assumption that in concentric circles, the shear stress is constant or shear force is constant. So if I am in this circle and if I'm in this circle, if I can somehow measure the shear force, they are going to be different. But if I travel along this circle, the shear force is same. And similarly, the shear force is same in this. So this is a assumption made by Cox. Okay. Now we have shear force at Z is equal to shear force at the fiber surface due to equilibrium. Okay. So then we can say 2 pi Z into tau Z dx is equal to 2 pi R tau E dz. So at the interface, the net shear force I have is 2 pi R tau E into dx. Dx is the length. At some circle which is at distance, let us say Z from the center of the fiber, it is 2 pi Z into tau Z dx. Both of them have to be same for equilibrium. Okay. Then we have tau Z is equal to R tau E by Z. What does this expression 2 tell me? Anybody? Look, study this expression carefully and tell me what does this tell me?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, it tells us that as we will move away from the center, the variation in longitudinal stress will decrease
No, it
as
tells
tau
no.
z is.
Shear stress
Don't
decreases.
shear stress decreases as you move away and away from the circle. Yes.
Yes.
And from our relation 1, we have tau Z is inversely proportional to, directly proportional to d sigma f by. So that way you are right. But if I just look at this expression, it tells me as I go away and away from the fiber surface, the shear stress is decreasing, which is actually quite logical if you look at this one. So in this small volume element, the shear stress must have been higher than the shear stress here, because here it is almost like a rectangle. Here the deformation, here the shear deformation is much higher. Yes. This is all we are saying with our equation number 2, that the shear stress in this region is higher than the shear stress in this region. As I go away and away from the fiber, the shear stress is lower and lower. This is equation number 2. Let us take it forward. Now we are looking at this from here. So let us say I have, if I am looking from this direction, what will I see? I will see something like this, where there are multiple fibers and we want to calculate now the shear strain. Okay, let us look at shear strain in the xz plane. My fiber is along x. I am now in my xz plane. Now what can I say about shear strain gamma? Shear strain gamma is equal to dw by dz. Yes, applied elasticity, last semester we have learned this, which is also equal to tau divided by gm. Gm is the shear modulus of the matrix. So I have dw by dz is equal to r tau e gm by gz, where tau e is the shear stress in the interface. Okay. If I integrate along z, I will get integration ur to uf dw is equal to integration small r to capital R. Small r is the radius of the fiber. Capital R is the radius till the next fiber, is equal to r tau e gm into 1 by z dz. Okay. Is this clear? All of you know how shear strain is defined, I am assuming. Yes?
Yes, sir.
So let us integrate what happens. So I have UR minus UF is equal to R tau E GM ln R by R. Okay, or shear stress in the interface or in the fiber is GM UR minus UF R ln R by R. Okay, so this is the shear stress at the fiber matrix interface. Next, we are making another assumption that the dimensions of the fiber are so small as compared to the overall size of my composite that there is no variation of shear stress along the radius of the fiber. Okay, so let us differentiate this tau E by in the x direction, because this can vary point by x. Remember, if you remember our objective, we want to find out how this shear stress is varying from a point by point basis. We found out the value of tau E. Let us integrate so that we are getting the total average shear stress over the entire length. So we were here. So integrating in the fiber direction, d tau E by dx is equal to, I can write d because as I said in the y and z direction, tau E is not varying inside the fiber. The fiber is so small. The only significant length is the length of the fiber, is equal to basically integration of this over x. Okay. GM is a constant, radius of the fiber is constant, radius of my size of my composite RV is constant. So I have this is equal to del UR del X minus del UR del X. Okay, is this clear so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let us take our derivation further. Now, also keep in mind that del UR by del X is the stress strain in the fiber, which can also be expressed as sigma F by EF. Okay, the strain at a point is stress divided by modulus. Del UM by del X is the strain in the matrix, which we are assuming to be the applied strain. The strain in the matrix is same everywhere and is the same as the applied strain. So we are saying that due to the presence of the fiber, the only thing that the matrix is, the only new strain that the matrix is getting is not the tensile strain but the shear strain. So we will make this assumption that matrix strain is same everywhere and is equal to same applied strain. And I also have earlier proven that del sigma F by del X is minus 2 tau E by X. From this I have del tau E by del X is comes to be some expression like this. Now let us put all together 1, 2, 3 and 4. If I put all in 3, I get del square sigma F by del X square is this. Okay. Now let us 2 GM R square ln R by R, all are constant. So let us group it and call it N square. So I have an equation like this. How can we solve a differential equation like this? Equation number 5. What is the solution of a differential equation as shown in equation 5? So equation for something like that is going to be E1 F1 plus B sine Hx Nx by R plus D cos H Nx by R. Now we need boundary conditions that when x is equal to L, sigma F is 0. Okay. When x is minus L, also sigma F is 0, meaning that we are saying that at the tip of the fiber, there is no stress transfer. The stress transfer is only happening through the curved surface area of my fiber. And if my center is 0, at x is equal to L, sigma F is 0. When x is equal to minus L, also x is equal, sigma F is equal to 0. So these are my two boundary conditions. If I put that, I will find out the value of B and D. B will come out to be 0. D is minus EF EI cos H NL by R. So based on this, I have my solution that sigma F varies from point to point using this relationship, and shear stress inside the fiber also varies from point to point using based on this relationship. So it comes out to be something like this, that if I have a fiber and if I apply load to the matrix. From the matrix through shear transfer, the fiber is getting stressed, and the normal stresses take this variation and the shear stress takes this variation. If I go back to my previous equations, can you quickly tell me where and how much is the maximum value of sigma f, and where and how much is the maximum value of tau e? Please try. These equations give you how sigma f is varying as a function of x. For what value of x is sigma f the highest? For what value of tau e is sigma is for what value of x is tau e the highest? How do you find out when it is highest? For sigma f to be highest, what is the condition that has to be satisfied?
Its
Maxima,
first
minima,
derivative-
anybody?
Yes, its first derivative
Its
should
first
be 0 and
derivative
second
should be
derivative
0.
should be greater than
Yes, yes, yes. So sides are missing. Okay, so based on that, what can we find out? We'll find out that the normal stress is highest at the middle of the fiber when x is equal to 0, and shear stress is maximum at the two tips. Okay, this also explains that if you have a composite material and if you apply load, most likely the fiber is going to break in the middle, right in the middle, because the stress is highest at the middle. Okay, good. Any questions about this Cox model? Yes, or it became too heavy?
Sir, what S represents in that equation? Small s.
Which one?
See, last slide.
S is
Yeah.
L by R. S is L by R.
Okay, sir.
If you see, it is cos H N L by R. N L by R is written as NS. Okay. I will send you a detailed handwritten derivation. It is not there in many textbooks, so it is not there in so much detail. So whatever I have slide by slide, whatever I have been sharing, I will write it. I have written it already in a piece of paper. I will scan it and I will send it to you. But yeah. Any questions? All the assumptions are clear. Let us recall what the assumptions are. I think this is the most important slide where most people don't understand. I hope I have driven home the point about shear lag models. Yes. Everybody understands why this is known as shear lag.
Sir, here the sigma is introduced due to the shear force.
Yes, exactly. So we are saying that the stress transfer from the matrix to the fiber is due to shear stress due to shear strain or shear stress in the matrix. We apply the load to the matrix. Due to the presence of the fiber, the matrix is getting sheared, and this shear is transferred to the fiber, who in turn will then take up all the load bearing capacities. That's why these principles are known as shear lag. And this is only an assumption. It is partly true. If you were to do a finite element analysis and calculate the stress at point by point, you will see that it will do a reasonable job. It is not 100% perfect, but it is a reasonable assumption. Okay. And we have also found out that the stress varies from point to point in a highly non-linear manner. If you go to our last slide, sigma f is Young's modulus of the fiber into applied strain into 1 minus cos h nx r cos h ns. So this is highly non-linear. Yes, it is hyperbolic of cosine. It varies in that manner. It is not linear, but according to this model. Now, look at this model. Can anybody guess where the volume fraction is coming into the picture? What term is taking care of our volume fraction? Somehow the volume fraction has to come, correct? Yes or no? Because I mean the properties of the composite material will depend on the volume fraction of the fiber. And the stress will also depend on the volume fraction of the fiber. The more the fibers, higher the stress. But in all of these expressions, there is explicitly VF is not there. Volume fraction of the fiber is not there. But it is indirectly accounted for. Can anybody look at this and tell me where do you think it might be accounted for?
In epsilon.
In?
Epsilon.
Epsilon is the strain.
Yes, sir.
No.
N by L, sir.
M
X
by
by
L
R.
is the
N by R.
L by R is the aspect ratio of the fiber. R is the radius of the fiber. L is the length of the fiber. This L by R is accounting for the fiber geometry. As the S is varying, the stress will vary. Hint is in this slide. If you look at this slide, we have found out what is the basis of calculating this value of capital R. R is the radial distance between two neighboring fibers. And can I say that this R is actually a function of the fiber volume fraction? If my fibers have high fiber volume fraction, then the value of capital R will be small or will be low. And if my volume fraction is low, the value of capital R is going to be high. So in this formulation, indirectly the fiber volume fraction is coming based on what is the integration limit of the fiber. Integration limit while doing our integration. We are saying that the influence of one fiber is radius R of the fiber is the small r is the radius of the fiber. Capital R is the radius till it approaches a next fiber. Okay. So this value of capital R indirectly is feeding our fiber volume fraction. And we can, if for a given fiber volume fraction, we can calculate the value of R by assuming a certain type of packing. For hex packing, capital R will be something else. For square packing, it will be something else. So the volume fraction is accounted for in a very indirect manner in this formulation so far. Clear? This is a very important point. Think about it for some time. Is this clear? Okay, I think it is straightforward. This is an important point. Any other point you want to discuss?
Sir, in the
Yes.
12th slide that you were showing, like what
Yes.
is that UFUR?
UFUR is the displacement, is the limits. We are saying that look, W is the displacement, UFUR are the limits of the displacement. When R is equal to R, W is varying from UF to UR. What is the displacement when radius is smaller? What is the displacement when it is capital R? So UF is the displacement of the fiber, UR is the displacement of the matrix. We put it in the next slide also where we say,
Okay.
where is it? UM by X is strain in the matrix, UR by X is the strain in the fiber.
Okay.
Okay. So another important point, according to this theory, stress in the tip of the fiber is the normal stress at the tip of the fiber is 0. So this is only going to happen if my radius of the fiber is very small. Then the connection between the fiber and the matrix is low. So you have here's the normal stress is equal to 0, because I mean my point is, if I'm pulling it like this, at this region also there could be stress transfer between the matrix and the fiber, yes, because this part is also connected. Here also there is perfect connection between the fiber and the matrix, and here in this region the matrix is subjected to normal stress. So in this region the shear stress is important, but in this region the normal stress might be more important for the matrix. If the radius of the fiber is significant, then there is also going to be stress transfer at the tips, but we are making an assumption that the radius is very small. So there is no stress transfer at the tips, and because there is no stress transfer at the tips, the normal stress at the tip of the fiber is close to 0 or 0. Clear now? But I mean to say that in reality this might or might not be 0, because the radius of the fiber is never going to be 0. It is going to be some finite number. So there will be some stress transfer also from the tip, but this model is neglecting that. Okay, good. So anything else? Any doubt about today's lecture? Okay, if not anything, then I think we can wind up today's lecture. It has been recorded. Tomorrow we will now that we know how to calculate the stress at every point in the fiber, we also know that the strain in the matrix is same and equal to applied strain. Then now for a applied stress, what is the average strain over the fiber and the matrix phase we can calculate. That in turn will help us calculate the modulus. That we will study tomorrow, how to calculate the modulus based on the stress transfer that is happening from point to point. And also we will learn more about what is critical length and how the properties are changing as a function of length, etc., etc. That is for tomorrow. Okay, so I am not uploading the presentation or anything today. Once everything is over, then I will share the study materials. Okay, any questions, or can I wind up this lecture? Okay, if not anything, then see you tomorrow. Bye.